So I'd actually like to have an honest discussion on why exes move on so fast and what you can do about them. It was sparked by this comment that I was looking at in our private Facebook support group. Now the comment itself is from over a year ago, but for some reason it popped up at the top of my feed. I guess it got a recent comment to it, but one specific thing about the wording of this message bothered me. How long has he been checked out to move on so quickly? Also, not trying to take it personally, but it's hard not to think there's something wrong with me, or he just didn't love me as he said he did, or why she is better than me. And it can be really devastating when an ex that you love deeply moves on very quickly after the breakup. It can feel like you've done something wrong. A really hard look at what causes exes to move on so fast after breakups. We're really looking at rebound relationships. So it stands to reason that by understanding everything we can about why rebounds work the way they do, we can actually understand why exes move on so fast. But first, a story. When I was in college, I went on a date with a girl that had just gotten out of a long-term relationship. In fact, this long-term relationship was her first and only relationship in her entire life, and she had it since she was 13 years old. Yeah, basically, she'd been with this guy for 10 years and they had just gone through a breakup. Now, naturally, this interests me. I mean, there's always kind of a competition at play when you're dating someone. You know, you're trying to be the best person so that they choose you. And what's a better competition than being chosen over the ex-boyfriend who she's been with for 10 years and everything like that? So I'm naturally drawn to her. Anyways, one date turns to two turns to three. And pretty soon I feel like I'm about to have my next girlfriend. And then I do something incredibly embarrassing. I decide I'm going to ask her out. But no, I'm not going to ask her out like the typical, you sit down, will we be official type conversation. I'm going to do something grand. So I do this. Basically, I went to her car, put a bunch of Post-it notes over it, telling her how much I liked her, how I want to be official and everything like that. Looking back, it was super cringeworthy, but hey, my failure is your entertainment. Now, obviously, she denied me. Politely. She was really nice about it. But the reason I'm telling this story isn't to kind of brag about all the times I've failed with women, and believe me, there are some embarrassing things and there are a lot of things. It's actually to talk about the difference between how she grieved the breakup and how her ex-boyfriend grieved the breakup. Remember, these two had been together for 10 years. Now, she grieves the breakup by going on a date, realizing she's not ready for a relationship because she's still hung up over her ex, and not wanting to hurt me, she decides to be the honorable person and say, I'm just not ready. Her ex, on the other hand, after a week goes on and dates someone new and is already in a relationship. So we have two paths for grieving. Why is it, though, that she reacts the way she does and he reacts the way he does? Think of it like this. The longer your relationship is, the longer the grief period is after it. Rebounds act as a way to combat that grief. It's a coping mechanism. So rather than sitting and wallowing in despair, you can use someone else to distract yourself from feeling the grief that you're ultimately going to feel if you're taking the polite, honorable approach. So you can use someone else to distract yourself from feeling the grief that you are inevitably going to feel if you're trying to basically deal with this breakup on your own. And this is not a new concept. In fact, Robert Tabai, who's a licensed clinical social worker, wrote an article in Psychology Today. It's alluring. Once a relationship is over, there's a void in your life, regardless of the quality of the past relationship. There's loss and grief because the psychological attachment is broken. So in the end, though, most of the reasons for why we rebound, why exes move on so quickly, are unhealthy. You have combating loneliness. The loudest voice is often the voice we're left with when we're alone. We have something as shallow as using another person to boost your self-esteem. Oftentimes breakups make you feel awful, so what's better than having your own personal person making you feel great? And then of course we have the slimy, more physical relations aspect of this, where your ex is moving on just to basically sleep with a bunch of people, and that's just kind of a slimy thing. But where things get really complicated is if your ex moves on to a rebound and then commits to them on a level that they've never committed to with you. What's happening there? Well, I think the thing to remember here is the misunderstanding that people have when it comes to rebounds is that you go through a breakup, you find a rebound, you get in the rebound relationship with the rebound. But that's not often how it actually happens. What usually happens is we're finding exes have rebounds set up even before you break up with the person. So it usually goes something like this. Your ex in their job meets someone new. It's a new girl, new guy, whatever. And at first it starts out as a harmless friendship with maybe a little bit of light flirting. Your ex might be completely happy with the relationship that they have currently, but the mere fact that they're around someone new can give them the taste of, hey, maybe I have potential with this other person. And there's a certain excitement to that because they're used to you, but they're not used to the other person. Then they start putting that person on a pedestal. They start romanticizing about them and planning your eventual demise to replace you with this other person. Maybe it is something as simple as they are already planning on breaking up with you, but are too afraid to do so because they don't want to be alone. So they're often looking for another person to replace you as the pseudo girlfriend, boyfriend type. So they move on to this new person and experience a honeymoon period. But where does the new level of commitment come into play? What we're finding happens is they start to convince themselves that they are in love with you on a level that they've never been in love with before, and they commit under the pretenses that they're in the midst of a honeymoon period. And this really brings the honeymoon period in and of itself to the forefront of this conversation, because I can totally see someone saying, well, yeah, but my ex moved on a week after he broke up with me, and now he proposed and is now married to his rebound. So what you're saying about all commitment decisions happening during a honeymoon period don't make sense, because it took 12 months for my ex to propose to his new girlfriend or boyfriend. So the honeymoon period, it doesn't explain everything away. And technically you're right, but technically you're not, because if you're using 12 months as an example, well, the honeymoon period can last that long. In fact, a recent Google search will yield the following answer when you ask it, hey, how long is the honeymoon period? 6 months to 2 years. Now, I think that's often too long, but if they're with someone new and they're experiencing the honeymoon period and they're convincing themselves that this is the only way they're ever going to feel this way, then they can make a rash decision. But this begs the question, what can you do if your ex has moved on really quickly? Look, most of the experts out there, when faced with a question like this, is literally going to tell you the cliche advice of letting go of your ex and moving on from your ex. And I agree with all of that. But here's the problem. Most of the time, it's not as simple as letting go of this person that you're obsessing about or that you're deeply in love with. It's not as simple as forgiving the fact that they've moved on with someone else. It's not as simple as just moving on. It's not easy to turn off your emotions. So instead, my argument on what you should do if you're finding yourself in this situation is a lot simpler and less nuanced. But if you do it, you're going to feel like you're doing something productive and you're going to improve your life in a way that is immeasurable. So all of the anger, all of the grief, all of the sadness, I want you to channel it. I want you to use it as fuel. Find something that you care about more than your ex and dedicate your time to it. Use all of that negative feelings that you're getting from this breakup and all of the anger you feel towards the new person and towards your ex for moving on to someone new, towards your ex for replacing you. Use all of that doing something positive, something that will help you knock your ex down off that pedestal. And what I think you'll find happen is that the more you do this, the more you use those negative emotions for fuel to do something positive, you can accomplish some really amazing things. And this is not necessarily a new concept that I haven't talked about before. In fact, one of my most recent videos, which is the one behavior exes can't resist, really has the same sentiment. And I always like going through the comments on new videos to see how people are reacting to it, to see if I hit a nerve or if I didn't do something right. And this one comment stuck out to me. They say, be your greatest self. They, your ex, need to see us at our highest self, which of course makes them jealous because they aren't reaching theirs. But by that moment, you're usually over them and are able to attract someone of higher quality than them. Let your grief be your fuel. I gave this advice to one of the members of our private Facebook support group who found themselves in almost this identical situation. Their ex broke up with them. Immediately after the breakup, their ex moves on to someone else. Again, guess what? 11, 12, 13 months go by. Their ex is proposing to this new person, and then they get married to this new person. And here was my response when this person was just dealing with all of the crazy emotions swirling inside of them. They also kind of wanted to send a letter, but that doesn't matter. I basically said, I think sending the letter leaves you open to having them, the ex and the new ex's husband/wife to pass it around to one another laughing at your expense. Now, the normal thing that most people will tell you is to let go of all the resentment that you're feeling, but I've never found it to be that easy. Instead, I'll tell you to use it as fuel. Find something that you care about more than him that you can dedicate your time to. And in a few months, if you keep at it, I can almost guarantee that you won't be upset at them. You'll be thanking them for not proposing to you because of all the amazing things happening in your life that wouldn't have happened if you continued to be with them. In the end, every breakup is an opportunity to do something amazing with your life. Turn the negatives into positives.